we're trying to create a scene here in Brooklyn. The edge of Brooklyn is the form for these types of musicians, you know, where they can do their thing together and have it all work. And have people who really can make an impact, you know, with their art, you know, with their music.
How many saxophones are there?
It is nice to be in a situation where we can just try to present some music, you know, real people doing what they want to do. Well, let's switch.
No.
It's a perspective thing, you know. I'm like all off here.
A lot of the times I'm working out certain issues or certain things, certain problems. You know, it could be some crazy stuff happening, and if I can figure it out in a song, it'll make me feel better about it, you know.
Cookies!
I'm ready for the cookies.
Are there raisins in here?
Yes, there are.
Let me try this one. It looks like North Dakota.
You know, the bottom line is finding people who really can make an impact, you know, with their art.
There were a lot of people vying for this role, but I was tasked to be
the wall guy.
Are you gonna tape his mouth shut?
Yes, yeah.
I really have to. I'm the most talkative person I've ever taped.
Well, you said you were taping me. I thought this was a sound check. She said she was taping me. I was like,
What's really appropriate hula hoop music, man? Go for it. Yes. Holy smokes. Sorry, Uri, you're out of a job, Uri. We'll see you later.
Oh my God! Let her steal away.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Whoa.
Slightly distracted by the hula hoop.
I was
there.
totally distracted by the hula hoop. I was trying to do my version of the stripper.
Just get a kick out of, seeing where you're going with.
I don't even know myself. I'm just letting it happen and see what happens. But that's the great thing about playing music with a lot of other creative musicians. It just goes.
lot of great stuff going on in the world, and you're definitely one of the cats who have been doing it for as long as I know you. And thank you, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here,
Great.
man. As always, you know.
Always, man.
How many saxophones are there?
It's easy for people to go, oh, jazz, oh, it's something weird and strange, and I don't like it. It's not solely in one genre, you know, in pop music or in pop film or theater. It's working on a lot of different levels.
Butch is really the composer. He's not just conducting and letting guys go here and you go there. He's really composing, you know, without paper, spontaneously composing with these gestures. And his approach is definitely not what you would consider the mainstream in jazz music.
I asked my conducting teacher, what if I wanted the orchestra to move down here or go over there? She said, well, you don't do that because the composer, you know. I said, well, what if I was the composer and I was the conductor? Could I? And she said, well, I guess so, but why would you want to do something like that? Watch me now. So I can get them to move more or less where I want. I tell the ensemble it's better for them to be in tune rather than the instruments. Stuff starts flowing when it starts flowing, Jack. I mean, they have to move with you, because if they don't move with you, Jack, it falls apart. Yeah.
I grew up listening to R&B and funk music and rock music and popular music. You know, I grew up in the 70s, you know, and I also listened to a lot of classical music. I got to New York, I was kind of young, and I was still doing gigs that I was probably not ready to be on. And, you know, 5 years later, I was playing with guys who were just getting out of school, who were like, man, now I feel old now. Going, oh, let me get some youngsters in my band or whatever, you know. Something about that energy, you know. I wasn't getting jaded by any stretch, but you play in town and you're hustling for years. You get to a certain point, you accept certain gigs, you play with certain players. Eventually, you need some people like this around you to kind of motivate you and remind you why you got started with it in the first place. music is so fragile, you know what I mean? At one moment you can be in heaven, the very next moment you can be in hell. You know, maybe not hell, but it's this delicate balance, you know, that you're constantly trying to manage and maintain, you know what I mean? Because you know when things are really happening, and you know when, it's like a dialogue, a conversation, you know when you're really kind of expressing your ideas and getting something that you really want to say out, and then you also know when you're kind of stammering and struggling. I think that's the beauty in it. I think if it was something you just turned on and it was always the same thing and you always knew what you were going to get, it's kind of flat, you know, it's kind of boring and just two-dimensional. When it's this constant kind of adventure, this kind of search, you know, one moment it could be one thing, and the next moment it could be something you had never envisioned, you know, that's what keeps you going.
Stay tuned.